Aloha and welcome to the Bear Woznick Adventure, coming to you from Waikiki Beach. We're right next to St. Augustine's Catholic Church. In fact, our radio booth is just right next to the altar, 25 floors up, but right next to where the altar is. I'm looking out over beautiful, peaceful Pacific. Pacific Ocean means peaceful. In Hawaii, here we often get the big ones. But I'm looking out from my window right now, and I can see miles of ocean, and I don't see a single wave. So going to be a lot of sad people today. But maybe Cindy and I will go out there and go snorkeling or get some spearfishing in. At any rate, welcome to the Bear Woznick Adventure. We have a cool guest returning with us, Dr. Jared Stout. He's been a guest of ours before. We got a couple of new things we want to talk with him about. So we'll be right back with more of the Bear Woznick Adventure.
Welcome to the Bear Woznick Adventure. Kickstart that engine and roll thunder with the pack. Explore the grittiness of manly spirituality. Gain traction in the virtues. Soup up your spiritual engine by turning adversity into adventure. Now here's Bear Woznick. Let's ride.
Aloha, welcome to the Bear Woznick Adventure. There's a scripture verse that comes to mind to me today. Stand fast in the liberty wherewith Christ has set us free, and do not be entangled again in the yoke of bondage. The Lord has set us free. And I'm just going to tell you my personal testimony, because we're going to talk a little bit today about beer with Dr. Jared Stout. I never really had a drink until after I gave my life to the Lord. I know this sounds kind of strange, but I was going to college, and I was in the middle of my junior year in college when I had a tremendous conversion experience in the Lord through the Catholic Charismatic Renewal. And it was only after that I began to feel free to have a beer. I know that seems kind of ridiculous, but I was uptight. You know, I was righteous, but maybe hyper righteous. You know, I just was too I don't know what the word is, but there is a scripture verse that says, "Righteousness and peace have kissed. Salvation has sprung up from the earth." And sometimes you can be so uptight righteous that you really don't have any peace. And we need to be able to strike that balance. And Dr. Jared Stout does a great job of that in two of the books that we're going to be talking about today. And that is that God has given us certain things, and He's given us the wisdom to create certain things, but we need to use those in a righteous way. We need to do, for example, drinking needs to be, if you do drink, it needs to be in moderation. Same thing with eating needs to be in moderation. Sex is a wonderful thing, but it needs to be done in an ordered way. It needs to be within the nuptial union. So we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to take the liberty, because I've got with us Benedictine Oblate, Dr. Jared Stout, who's the content director at Exodus 90 and a professor. So we're going to talk about the culture of beer. Aloha, Dr. Jared. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's just so cool because we're both Benedictine Oblates, so there's a great history of beer making within the culture of the Benedictines. But in your book, it's just so funny because I had you on and I wanted to get you right back, and we normally don't focus on books, but this book, The Beer Option, Brewing a Catholic Culture Yesterday and Today. So I thought it'd be kind of cool if you would just kind of give us a little background. How far back where did beer begin, and how far back did it start, and then how did it become part of our Catholic culture, or even biblical culture? Yeah.
Well, you know, there's a really big question in history. Did beer flow from the beginnings of civilization, or did it cause it?
I think it caused
That's
it.
how far back it goes.
Hey, Dr. Jared, you know what it is? We have cigar night here at my house about every couple months, and we'll have a beer or whiskey. Man, do we get creative when we have that cigar and that whiskey or the beer. We think we can solve all the world's problems. So I really think you're right that it was beer-inspired
and that's
Western
not even
civilization.
A joke.
Yeah,
it's not a joke, because population centers began to form around agriculture. Okay, well, why were people coming together for agriculture? To bake bread and to brew beer. And those were very connected. Now, beer as we know it today was perfected by Benedictine monks. Back in ancient Mesopotamia, they actually took twice-baked barley loaves, and they would allow them to ferment in a tub, and they would often put honey and fruit, They didn't understand yeast, right? That's Louis Pasteur, much more recently, where we understood what yeast is. But they knew if they put these things in this tub, that something good would happen. It would help the fermentation process. And they would drink it with straws. And in the Mesopotamian
Wait a minute,
language,
they weren't worried about turtles dying?
Turtles dying
I hope
in their
they weren't
tubs,
plastic.
you know?
I hope they weren't plastic straws.
Oh yeah, I think they were bone straws. Actually,
So would they all?
Then.
Oh yeah, would they all drink out of the same, like a tub, or how did they?
Yes,
was
it would be a
was it
common
thick?
tub.
Okay,
Yep. And it was almost like
okay.
an oatmeal-like substance. It was very thick.
Ah.
And they would call this sikaru. That was the Mesopotamian word for beer. And so people wonder, like, okay, but the Holy Land, right? Ancient Israel was part of the Near East, of that area. So why isn't there beer in the Bible? And the answer is that there is beer in the Bible.
There is, yes.
When you hear the translation, like John the Baptist, he gave up wine and strong drink. What's strong drink? Distilled beverages were not invented until the 15th century. There was not hard liquor back in biblical times. So that actually means wine and beer. I mean, something like beer, that oatmeal-like substance. That
it was made out of what beer is
tubs.
made out. Yeah, it fermented wheat or barley or whatever.
Yeah,
it had
barley
to be.
primarily.
It's beer.
Yeah, fermented barley. And that was actually part of the daily sacrifice of Israel. They would make a libation not only of wine, but of what they called shakar, related to that Mesopotamian word for beer, shikaru, right? So it's shakar, shikaru, very, very much related words. So beer is in the Bible, and it is used to worship God, right? And that shows us that everything in our lives has to be ordered to God. That's the purpose of sacrifice in the Old Testament. And so you make a sacrifice of your livestock, of your food, of your drink, and your whole lives are meant to become a sacrifice. And that principle remains today, even though we're not making those kinds of animal sacrifices, but that was part of God's pedagogy to teach us to give our best to God, including ourselves.
And beer was considered actually a food because there's so many nutrients and other things in it, and it does ferment. It's one way where you can keep the sustenance, right? Bread will get hard, bread will get moldy, but the beer you could carry it with you. It was a way of transporting.
Yes, and so it's important for a couple of reasons. I mean, beer has somewhat limited shelf life compared to wine and to other things, but it can last for weeks, maybe even a couple of months, when we're talking about that older form. So yeah, it would last a little bit longer than bread, but it was also safer to drink, right? Because the alcohol within it kills germs. And so it was important for people in the ancient world to drink wine and beer and not just water, because water was more easily contaminated without that alcohol. There's even saints, like, the patron saint of beer is Saint Arnold, and he would even say, drink beer, not water. And you think, well, why is he saying that?
Yeah.
That's why. It was actually for health.
Right.
And men, women, and children, even in the Middle Ages, drank beer. Not always very strong beer, right? There was something called small beer, right? So, women and children and even just men, as they're out working during the day, would drink small beer, but there was stronger stuff too.
And then so time evolved. We see it in the Old Testament, but isn't there some reference to it in the New Testament too?
Well, I already mentioned it. Just that one reference to John the Baptist as a Nazirite, not drinking wine and beer. But unfortunately, our Lord did not perform a miracle, as I like to call them, those beer miracles. But many saints did, actually. So like St. Columban and St. Bridget of Ireland performed beer miracles, multiplying the beer, just like our Lord multiplied the loaves. So we don't see it coming out very much in the New Testament, but it's really in the life of the monastery. I mean, the Mediterranean culture, even though beer was strong in Mesopotamia, but throughout the rest of the Mediterranean, wine was really supreme. And of course, our Lord uses wine in the Last Supper, drawing from the Passover traditions. Beer becomes important in Catholic culture above what we refer to as the grape line. That's where grapes can grow in Europe.
Yes.
And because they needed something safe to drink and something enjoyable to drink. Beer was the primary beverage in Northern Europe.
So you're saying there's no winery, there's no wineries in Bavaria then?
Right, that's right. And certain parts of Germany, and the Rhineland, but yes, that's right. Throughout most of Germany, you cannot make wine.
Yeah, so they make. We're talking about it with Dr. Jared Stout, and we're going to talk more when we get back about this application of how to brew Catholic culture. This is the Bear Woznick Adventure. We'll be right back. SchoolofManliness.com is a place for men of grit and grace to join together, to inspire, to encourage, and to challenge each other to grow in manly virtue. Members receive morning man meditations, a monthly curriculum that is rich with audio, video, and written content, and a trail guide to help you map out your new trajectory. Many of our members lead their sons through this same curriculum. Your membership gives you access to both the Man Cave, which is our non-Facebook type community, and the School of Manliness at schoolofmanliness.com. Become a member at schoolofmanliness.com. Deep Adventure Ministries is grateful to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for underwriting the Bear Woznick Adventure on EWTN. Notre Dame Federal Credit Union provides car loans, mortgages, SBA loans, and depository accounts nationwide, as well as 24-hour support. Go to deepadventure.com to find their link, or go to NotreDameFCU.com. Mahalo to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for making the Bear Woznick Adventure possible. That they were born with, that each man individually is factory loaded with by God. Paul said, "Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, do all things in love." Finally, here is a book that talks with men the way men talk with each other. Just plain old straight shoot. By the way, Mama Bears, this is your chance to get this message to your men. Go to schoolofmanliness.com or anywhere books are sold. 12 Rules for Manliness. Where have all the cowboys gone?
This is a warning. The Bear Woznick Adventure is dangerous. The radical change Bear challenges you to is not for wimps. Change this station now to a soft rock station before it's too late. You've been warned. Now, here is Bear Woznick.
Aloha, welcome to the Bear Woznick Adventure. My wife always tells me to remind you about our YouTube channel. It's the Bear Woznick Spirit of Adventure YouTube channel. We have so many things there. We have a couple thousand videos up there. All of our radio shows are you can watch the video version on our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel there too. And we also have a lot of these 60-second shorts that are really cool. They're done with animation. My sons Shane and Joshua do all that work, and they take excerpts from one of my books or something and they make it into these 60-second memes. So there are things that you can share with others on social media, and it helps to evangelize and also challenge it. It's mostly focused on challenging and encouraging men, but it's something for the women too. So go to our YouTube channel, Bear Woznick Spirit of Adventure, and become a subscriber. We'd love to have you join us there. And this, if you want to see how handsome Dr. Jared Stout is, you'd have to go to our YouTube channel because you can watch the video version of the show there. So Dr. Jared, where do we go from? How do you make that leap then to how do we the whole thing about brewing Catholic culture? Tell us about when the monks kind of showed up and started doing their handiwork.
Well, as a theologian, some people ask me, like, why did you write a book on beer? I mean, really, why did you, waste that time or spend that time on beer? And I like to answer, it's because if we can get beer right in our lives, we can get anything right. How we dress, how we spend our time, how we eat, how we drink, our friendships, our work, everything needs to be ordered towards God. And it is the monks who show us how to do that. The monks create a kind of culture in miniature in the monastery. They are the ones who perfected beer. So who is the first one to put hops into beer? monks in northern France. I actually went to one of the first monasteries to use hops in beer, outside of Rouen, so Saint Vendry Monastery, and they even had hops decorating their cloister. Carved it right into the stone there and everything. And because hops not only gives a balance to the flavor, that kind of bitterness to balance the sweetness of the malt, but it also is an even stronger preservative. So we were talking about how long does beer last, right? In ancient Mesopotamia, it might be a couple of weeks, but if you put hops into beer, it can go out longer, a few months, all of a sudden, 3-4 months. So it became over time the predominant additive, but the first large-scale brewery in Europe was probably at a monastery in Switzerland, the monastery of St. Gall. And so it is the monks who produced and perfected the means of brewing and the equipment that we use and all of that, and even how we make it. Like I said, adding the hops in, that comes from the monks. And the monks, once again, they're living this whole way of life, this whole culture ordered towards the Lord. What are they using beer for? It might kind of surprise you, to actually strengthen the sick, because the sick often have a hard time eating food, and so the nutrition of the beer, they're serving it to their guests. You could show up at any monastery in Europe and have a free night's sleep and a free meal.
Well, I got to tell you something. My dad, when he became older, he was a Catholic deacon, so we had to put him into a more intensive care there with the Benedictine order. And he walked in, and there's that sign, treat all people like they're Jesus, like they're Christ. And my dad's sense of humor, you got to understand. He said, "What? You guys are going to crucify me?" But there is
that's happened in some monasteries.
But there is that hospitality that, like when we have cigar night over here with the guys, and there's beer and there's whiskey. It's never seen no one over imbibes. But it opens up, I don't know what, it opens up a floodgate of conviviality and of communication. Right. And when we have, most of the guys that come over here are Christians, but there's others that come too. But what are we talking about? We're sharing our normal everyday lives, and yet that always tends to turn towards the Lord. And so it's a beautiful way, isn't it, over a beer, like this phenomenon of theology on tap. Yeah,
absolutely. Because a lot of times people are uncomfortable talking about the most important things, right?
Yeah.
Can't we just talk about the weather and sports and things like that? But it's amazing. You sit down with another man and have a beer, a glass of wine, or a whiskey, and all of a sudden, it does really open up conversation and friendship and getting into things more deeply. And I like to describe a Catholic approach to drinking, inspired by the monasteries, as based on feasting, fasting, and friendship. And feasting is that when we are consuming alcoholic beverages, right, it is meant to be ordered towards honoring the Lord. And it's a good way of judging our drinking. Does it honor God or does it not? Fasting. Well, we have these penitential seasons to keep our eating and drinking and other comforts in check, and we don't become too attached to them. And then in friendship, right? We don't drink as an escape. We drink to be drawn closer together in communion. Everything ultimately is about communion. And so our drinking has to be ordered towards God in communion with others. And then we know, okay, we are drinking like Catholics.
That's so cool. Adam Minahan and David Niles, and their show, their I forget the name of the radio show, but they have the Council
Catholic
of Men.
Man Show.
The Catholic Man Show. Those guys are just great, and they have the Council of Men. Where we have the Man Cave, Bear's Man Cave. It was inspired by their Council of Men, but you look at they start every show off with a manly beverage. Now, for some people, a manly beverage may be a hot coffee, right? For some men, they need to not drink at all. But they always start with kind of reviewing a manly beverage, and I think it's a certain liberty that Catholics have. And I go back to that what I said: righteousness and peace have kissed. God's calling you to righteousness, but there should be a peacefulness about that. In other words, when you're doing things according to God's order. Yeah,
and when your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out, right? And so there shouldn't be any hesitation If we're struggling to order something to God, it's leading us into sin. That's what that phrase means, not literally to pluck your eye out, but it means anything that leads you to sin should be removed from your life. And that can be alcohol. Yes. And I have a whole chapter in the book on the problem of alcoholism. Yeah. Now, some people say to me, because people drink too much, shouldn't we as Catholics tell them to avoid drinking? And the answer is, we need to help people to order everything rightly. Sexuality can be destructive, and yet it's one of the greatest gifts of God. To reflect his own love for us. And it's the same thing with drinking, that it is a reflection of the joy that we will have in heaven, right? When rightly ordered in friendship, not just because the wine is so good. Oh, isn't this so enjoyable? It's a reflection of heaven. But no, it's like at that moment when I'm celebrating something like a wedding, and we're all drawn together for this common purpose, and we're drawn in love and friendship. And the beverage is an expression of that. Right. And we say, yes, that is helping us to glimpse what God has in store for us.
Yeah, I'm fortunate because for me, I've never enjoyed any feeling of being, the lightness that can come with the beer, the joy that can come with the beer, but I've never been one, I've never wanted to, I usually drink a half a beer actually. I come in from a surf and there's nothing but a beer cuts the taste of the salt and stuff, or maybe I'll have a beer, but I'm not one who really is given to, I don't like the feeling of drinking to excess. I just don't like it at all. I don't like the feeling of it or after it, so I very rarely have experienced that. There's been a couple times when for very good reason I purposely did that, but I did it I drank too much in the privacy of my home, because that there was something tough happened in my life, and I go, well, this is it. If there's ever was a moment, this was it. But we need to, and even that I think is ordered, because all things in moderation. But even moderation, you have to have in moderation. Sometimes there's a time, like you said, for feasting and for fasting. But there is that the truth that many people shouldn't do that. But then you think about things like eating. You can't give up eating. It's like alcohol. You can say I won't drink it, but eating. That's tough. That's tougher because you have to really always do that in an ordered way. But that's the Catholic teaching. I know you quote Thomas Aquinas and Augustine in here, so you have deep philosophy about this. Can you give us a couple more thoughts about this concept of feasting, fasting, and order?
Yeah, so I lean into Thomas Aquinas' teaching on moderation. And moderation is a mean between extremes. Like it's the middle point between extremes. And even in alcohol, he says, yeah, there could be a defect. And that is if you're not eating and drinking in a proper way for your health, or maybe you're refraining from opportunities of communion with others.
Yes.
Right. And so it's not like you need to drink alcohol, but it's like, no, you need to approach food and drink in a healthy way, right? Not to excess, but not avoiding them in improper ways either. So we're always looking for moderation in everything to be rightly ordered. And that means that everything in our lives can point to God. That's what
Amen.
Ordering means. It's either going to lead you to God or take you away from him. And I think we need an examination of conscience, right? It's not just beer, but how am I using technology, right? And food, and do I have a proper balance of things?
You can
Are my friendships leading me to God or away from him? We really need to have that examined.
Yeah, you can weight lift too much. I mean, there's all of that if it's ordered to the Lord. But okay, so we're going to take a break and we're going to come back in a moment and talk about something else with you. But there's this heartbreaking song. I just want to, you're a theologian, so we have you here. We're going to ask you this question. There's a song, in heaven there ain't no beer, that's why we drink it here. Is that true?
I'm going to say false.
You're a theologian.
St. Bridget of Ireland prayed for a lake of beer that would be lined with Jesus, Mary, and the saints. And so I'm just going to trust St. Bridget on that one and say, heaven is the perfection of all things.
Oh, praise
and
God.
So there's something in heaven that is the perfection of beer. That's my final answer.
Okay, that's the final answer, and he doesn't get to make a phone call to a friend. Okay, this is the Bear Woznick Adventure with Dr. Jared Stout. We'll be right back with more. Here is a YouTube video short, which is based on an excerpt from my newest book, 12 Rules for Manliness, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? do what needs to be done. When I was young, the men around me knew that their families counted on them to provide for them, and they knew that their families counted on them to protect them. There was no condescending nanny state taking care of them like those men were victims. No, they just manned up and did what needed to be done. The men that I knew growing up were like rocks, immovable and maybe to some degree unhuggable, but they were men. They knew their duty and they did it. They manned up by giving themselves to those that they loved. Go to schoolofmanliness.com and subscribe to our weekly email to receive video YouTube links of the Bear Woznick radio show, as well as the Spirit of Adventure with Bear and Cindy TV show, which, by the way, is filmed in the tropics, as well as our manly evangelistic YouTube shorts. Go to schoolofmanliness.com.
Be the kind of man that when he gets out of bed in the morning, the devil says, "Oh no, he's up." Go to deepenadventure.com and invite Bear to speak.
Aloha, welcome back to the Bear Woznick Adventure. Just want to invite you to go to our website, schoolofmanliness.com. And the men, we invited you to join our man cave. It's and the School of Manliness. We have a non-Facebook community there where we kind of share what's going on in our lives. We encourage each other there. We challenge each other. We find out what prayers we need to pray for each other. And then we have about once a month we'll have a Zoom video meetup. It's not Zoom. We have our own meetup capability in our website. And then we also have the School of Manliness, which is about 2.5 years of curriculum that you go through. We go through it together. But in the curriculum, there's audio. Like we have some really cool teachings from Father Bryce Lundgren, the cowboy Catholic priest in Wyoming, and others. We have video. We have written content. We have self-assessments. And so once a month, you can tackle one of these different areas of manliness. And you can. What's cool about it is some fathers are getting their sons. If you want to, we can give you a special login so that your sons can go through the School of Manliness. You can lead them through it. Maybe over the course of a month, you can lead them maybe once a week. Sit down and say, "We're going to watch a video right now, and let's talk story about it." But they can get access to the School of Manliness, and you can track how they're doing in it, and you want to foster that and be with them through it. But they can't be part of the man cave. But we encourage you to go to schoolofmanliness.com, become part of the man cave, and participate with us in the School of Manliness. We have as our guest today Dr. Jared Stout, who is the content director at Exodus 90. And I didn't give a full introduction to you. I think one of the coolest things is you teach for the lay division of St. John Vianney Seminary, and also married and children, and is involved in so much with building manliness, Catholic manliness. So we talked last time, and I just written something about Catholic education. I just written it down, or the need for that. And you said, "Oh, I wrote a book on that," or somehow we came to know this book, Words Made Flesh: The Sacramental Mission of Catholic Education. And we have seen the whole education system has been taken over by, I would say, the devil. I mean, it's the education system as we knew it when I was a child. I went to Catholic school, and now we just see that it has become the place for. I see two things. Women are great teachers, but I see that it's almost all women there. I don't think young boys are getting the challenge of a male teacher. The way a man would teach is not as nurturing necessarily. So I think young boys and men miss out on that. And then also we see just the whole woke culture is just infused in all of that. So we need, as Catholics, we need to rethink this and find new solutions. So Words Made Flesh, a Sacramental Mission of Catholic Education. Just tell us about that. Tell us about the need
I
and
feel
the
like
solution.
first I have to address the fact that we were just talking about a book about beer, and now we're talking about a book about education.
Yeah.
How does that happen? But like you said, I mean, we have a common mission to serve Catholic men, and beer is a great way to engage Catholic men. And one of the things that we really do need from men is to be leaders in Catholic education, as you just said. And I have a whole section in the book on fatherhood. And fathers are the number one influence on the faith life of children by far. Right? So it's a lot of times parents think, I'm just going to send my kid to Catholic school and they'll take care of it. I'll bring my kid to Sunday school, I'll give them the sacraments, and that's enough. We can now say that is not enough. It is not working. Something is broken, right, in the handing down of the faith. And it starts with us, men. Where is it broken? We need to step up. We cannot just farm things out to even the priests, but let alone the teachers and principals and so forth. What are your kids learning in school? Do you know? Right. Is it the values that you want them to have, right? Are you involved in handing down the faith? Because, like I said, there can't be a substitute for that. So I would say what the book is really trying to do, in a way, it's like the beer option, is connecting faith and culture. Because the book is really ordered not so much to the failure of public schools, because that's just so far gone. I'm trying to challenge Catholic schools. You could maybe say homeschool families or anyone involved in Catholic education to any extent, to say education can't be just like the public schools with Catholic sprinkles on top. You can't just say, well, the curriculum is exactly what the public school does, but we also teach the faith. We also go to Mass once a month or even once a week. It all has to be integrated, right? So the way that we approach everything, eating, drinking, clothing, work, family life, and education has to have faith at the center. And I love, even the hardest challenges you can bring to me. Bring them, right? What about math? Dr. Stout, what about math? How do we approach that from a Catholic perspective? Oh, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, where does the number 2 exist? I mean, you can't go on a safari and hunt the number 2, right? It is a mental concept. And is it real? I mean, it is in the sense that it is our way of grasping reality. God uses a mathematical language to create the universe, and that's why the universe is understandable. Dogs have no access to mathematics. It is something that is in our minds because we are made in the image and onto the likeness of God. Math is a way of communicating with God, therefore. We are understanding the language that He instilled into His creation. We can perceive it, and it can shape the way that we think. And when we grasp mathematics, we become logical thinkers.
Yeah.
And that makes us more like God.
I know. When I first started studying logic, I go, this is going to be so cool. And then I realized it was math. There was a lot of math involved in, in the different equations you use in logic. There's a quote from Cardinal Muller here, who I really love. Cardinal Muller. I was at a special meeting, I would guess, of the Napa Institute in D.C., and it was right at the time that the scandal was breaking, and Lugano had written the first letter, and so there all these people were there, and there was this a great scandal had broken out, and so there was a lot of, if you were a Catholic priest wearing a Roman collar, you were considered a child abuser or something, And here's Cardinal Muller. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but he's tall. He's a big man. He would be a defensive tackle, I think, or guard. And I walk downstairs and I see him standing there, as a cardinal, just with his hands, fists on each side, to his side, and just standing there. And he's waiting for someone to pick him up. They're going to go say Mass. And I got to go visit with him for a few moments. But he was just standing there strong, just as strong as can be, for the gospel. And you quote him in your book. I love this statement: truth is not an abstract theory in the heads of a few individuals, but rather the ground on which everyone finds stability and strength, and the source from which all can quench their thirst for God and eternal life. Yeah, we need truth. You'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And all we're seeing is twisted and lies and confusion now in the social media, in our
and
schools.
truth is not an abstract concept, right?
Right.
Because what happens, you throw out concepts and everyone argues about concepts. Truth ultimately is a person.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that person has taken flesh.
Yeah.
And I think Catholic education, and we really need to expand that word. Everyone, whether you've been to school or not, I mean, there are people who haven't been to school, right? I mean, in the world, whether you've been to school or not, every human being is educated, because we have to learn how to live in the world. And our parents educate us, and we learn, even going to church, there's things that we learn and we pick up. We're all educated, but how are we educated? And in a way, like, our culture has the most schooling of, like, maybe any nation in history, but we're probably the least educated.
We're the most foolish too.
Knowing how to live.
Yes.
And we need to make our children to become disciples of Jesus Christ. Disciple means student. He is the master. Master means teacher, actually. He's the teacher. And he teaches us what it means to be a human being, how we should live, and what we should do with our lives. I mean, we think, what do we want out of our kids' education? Parents generally say, well, I want them to do well in school so they can get a good job, so they can have money. Hello, parents. That is not the end-all, be-all, and that doesn't actually even lead to happiness at an earthly level. It's kind of funny. There's been studies. Are rich people happier than other people? No, they're not. Self-reported, right? No, they have the same problems as everybody else. That's not how we find happiness. Jesus is the one who teaches us that, and he is the truth, literally, because Thomas Aquinas, we'll come back to him like we did for moderation, right? He gives us the definition of truth, the conformity of the mind to reality. And Jesus is the word spoken by the Father. The Father communicates who he is as God, pours it all out into the Son, and then he speaks forth creation through his word. He speaks it forth. And that same word has come into his creation to teach us the truth of all things. He's the teacher.
Yeah, I love that.
That's why our kids have to go to Catholic school or have a Catholic education at home.
Yes, and for a lot of people, it is at home. I know John Paul II was, I think, speaking to some engineering students, and he said when you're studying your math, whatever it is, far beyond algebra probably, you're studying the face of God, because it's truth. And Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and life. He didn't say I am one of the ways. He said, I am the truth. So the truth is a person. We're talking with Dr. Jared Stout. This is the Bear Woznick Adventure. We'll be right back with more. People love our EWTN TV show, Long Ride Home with Bear Woznick. Thanks to you, the show has won 4 different Tally Awards. And now, instead of waiting each week for the next episode to air, you can actually binge watch our show and even share it with your friends when you go to deepenadventure.com and join the Mama Bears or the Man Cave. Along with all the other benefits, you get total access to all the seasons of our aired episodes, plus instant access to episodes that won't even air for several months. Long Ride Home with Bear Woznick, a great way to communicate the gospel in a gritty enough way that even tough men will stop and watch at deepenadventure.com. Deep Adventure Ministries is grateful to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for underwriting the Bear Woznick Adventure on EWTN. Notre Dame Federal Credit Union provides car loans, mortgages, SBA loans, and depository accounts nationwide, as well as 24-hour support. Go to deepadventure.com to find their link, or go to NotreDameFCU.com. Mahalo to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for making the Bear Woznick Adventure possible. Announcing Spirit Adventure TV with Bear and Cindy. So many people, especially you mama bears, tell us we want more of Bear and Cindy together. Well, we're happy to announce our website, spiritofadventuretv.com, as well as our YouTube channel, Bear Woznick Spirit of Adventure, where you can watch Spirit of Adventure TV with Bear and Cindy. Join us where we live in the Hawaiian Islands or where we sail our boat, the Spirit of Adventure, in the Caribbean. Experience both adventure and serenity with us as we share our life together, as well as the joy and the wisdom of our faith. Go to spiritofadventuretv.com to find out more, and subscribe on YouTube to Bear Woznick Spirit of Adventure. And join us, Spirit of Adventure, with Bear and Cindy.
Are you still listening? I thought we warned you to change to an easy listening station. Well, you asked for it. Here is more of the Bear Woznick Adventure.
Aloha, welcome to the Bear Woznick Adventure. I'm really excited about my book. My newest book is called 12 Rules for Manliness, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? Isn't that a great title? My wife and I were driving around Diamond Head over here in Waikiki, and she said, "You're going to love this song," and she turned it up, and I forget the name of the artist, but the song is basically "Where Have All the Cowboys Gone?" It's a woman singing it, saying we need our men to be men again. And so the book is a type of book that a lot of men don't really care to read, but a lot of men have written. I've never heard of this before with one of my books, but where they'll read the book and then they start over again as soon as they're done, because it's a mixture of theological and the cardinal virtues and practical wisdom. And the book speaks to men like two men sitting down and having a beer after a hard day's work and just talking about real stuff. So the book is really meant for men of grit and grace. And but women, it's probably going to be up to you to get this into your men's hands. It's called 12 Rules for Manliness, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? Printed by Sophia. We have with us as our guest Dr. Jared Stout. He is the director of content for Exodus 90, and not very often I have a guest back. At least not as quickly as I invited Dr. Jared to come back. And we're talking about the need for Catholic education. You know, there's one of my favorite authors, Dr. Jarrett, is Louis L'Amour, the great Western novelist. I have all of his, I have them right here. I have all of his genuine imitation leather-bound books. I used to get one a month. I collected them. But his book about himself was called The Education of a Wandering Man. So talk to us specifically about Catholic education of a man. How do we
I'm so
grow
glad
boys?
you mentioned Louis L'Amour, because when you were talking about, where have all the cowboys gone, I was thinking about men not only being educated in life, but being educators. I think they're the key missing educator in our culture for young men and young women both. And you kind of think, well, how does a dad teach? He teaches all the time. He might not be giving classes to his kids, but the most important things in life are not learned in the classroom. We know that, right? And one of my favorite educators, his name was John Sr. When he was middle school aged, he ran away from home. He grew up in New York City and he was living in Long Island. He took his piggy bank money, got a bus ticket, and it dropped him off as far as it would go, the ticket, into South Dakota. And he was picked up wandering down the road by a rancher because there was a tornado coming. He's like, get in the truck, And he went out, after his parents discovered where he was in a panic, right? But he ended up going out every single summer during high school to the Dakotas and learning to be a cowboy. And when he got into higher education in the United States, he said, these students aren't ready for education because they don't know how to be human beings.
Right.
And I really lean into his story and methodology in the book because our young people today are missing the fundamental elements of human education that they would need to be able to really go far in education and maybe understand the truth that we were talking about earlier. Why is the truth not sinking in? Well, because young people don't have strong relationships with their parents. They're not wandering around in the woods. They're not learning how to do things with their hands. They're not building those virtues, not only the moral virtues, but virtues are the excellences of just knowing how to do things well, the discipline of life that we need growing up. And so this is why men are so important for education right now. If you allow your young men to be taught just by the school system, what did you say earlier, right? They're going to be effeminate because of that, because they're not having their education rounded out by life experience.
Right.
And so I would say the key argument of my book, because it's the sacramental mission of education, words made flesh. Words are not enough. Who's going to put flesh onto those words? We need men to step up and to provide young people with life experience, teaching young people how to live. Men, we need to do things with other men, with young people, because you can go I hear this all the time. I'm sure you have as well. I went to Catholic school and I didn't learn the Catholic faith. I had religion class, but I didn't really know it. Right. Ideas bounce off. They have to be experienced. They have to be lived. We need a whole way of life around Catholic education, and men are going to have to lead it.
There's a difference between knowing about God and knowing God. One of my scripture verses I came across when I was 19 years old, and when I'd first given my life, as I said, had that deep conversion experience. It's in Ecclesiasticus, I believe it is. It's, my son, if you aspire to serve the Lord, prepare yourself for an ordeal. For the chosen man is proven in the furnace of much affliction, and other translations says much humiliation. But I'll fall into the hands of God and not into the hands of man, because from him comes your reward. And as great as his majesty is, so too is his mercy. And I was writing about this, and I'm writing a new book, Man Meditations for Men of Grit and Grace. So I'm in June right now. I'm writing one for each day.
I can't wait to read that.
Yeah, thank you. But I was remembering as a child, my dad took us out. Louis L'Amour was, I think he was in Jamestown, North Dakota. My dad was born near Bismarck. And as a kid, we would drive all the way back from California to see his relatives. And I remember him taking us down to the Mandan Indian village in Bismarck, the Sioux. Well, they're part of the Lakota, I think. But all the Plains Indians had something for young men they called an ordeal. For some of them, they would put bear claws in their chest, and they would hang by those claws for long periods of time. A boy can't become a man without an ordeal. My son, if you aspire to serve the Lord, prepare yourself for an ordeal. And my wife and I were talking about this morning. We take these long walks, and then we sit and we read and have our little prayer time together, over coffee, of course. But she was saying how a boy needs a mom. A mom can be overprotective and overly nurturing for a boy. That's important. When a boy is young, that's where he gets his self-esteem, but he doesn't get any confidence from that. He only gets confidence by facing challenges. And I remember I went into the school system with one of my sons. It was the last day that they were going to be going to this school. I pulled them out, and we were moving. They were young, and we were moving. I was moving them here to Hawaii with me. And the teacher asked, "Well, tell us about yourself, and what did education do for you in school? And what was the key thing that you learned in school that helped you in your life?" And I said, "Nothing." I was shocked I said that. But this was a woman that had really was so bad for my son, the way that she taught. But that's not really, that was too strong of a statement, but we really need to have life experience alongside with the education to interpret it.
I'd say the same thing about my public school education. I got kicked out of the public schools in
Proud
seventh grade
of you.
for bringing my Boy Scout knife to school.
Oh,
and
yeah,
only the Catholic school would take me in.
We used to always, I was telling that to the other day, we always had, all of us had knives. We all had our,
But it was zero tolerance, right? Because, back in the 90s and trouble that was going on.
Yeah.
Anywho, I would say up to that point, school didn't do anything for me. Where was my education? It was my dad reading me The Lord of the Rings.
Really? How cool is that?
We also had some horses, so taking care of horses.
Yeah, right.
Becoming an Eagle Scout. And then when I turned 16, I left home and I went off to Poland as an exchange student for a year.
Wow, that's gnarly.
It was my ordeal.
That's gnarly.
And
wow.
My son, Lewis, he went off just to work, at our local feed store. Now he's going to go off to trade school as he turns 18 here, and he's going to go off on his, little adventure. But, I think it's absolutely true. One of my best friends, Jason Craig, has a book called Leaving Boys Behind.
Yeah.
And that's what this is about. Education has to include, for young men especially, this kind of ordeal that we're talking about. And so if we just say, well, the schools will do it, they're going to go through the school system, we're going to send them out in the world, and they're not going to be ready.
And you're going to get beta males, dude. You're going to get those these are the soft beta males. Their moms overly protect them. They overly nurture them. We're about to take a break here, but I got to say, I know each of my sons, it's cool. Like my son Joshua, who does this, he got his pilot license when he was 15 and a half, before he could drive a car. So that believe me, that is a young boy becoming a man, just that process. And another one of my sons took off for Nepal when he was about 19 years old to do a mission trip. And another one of my sons joined the Navy. And I think it's that education of the wandering man. I love the way you say you need to wander a little bit out in the forest, out in the woods. We did that. We lived with our bow and arrows. We went out into the woods and when we were young and got dirty. And I remember always having a scrape someplace on my body. We need our fathers to get more involved with the academic education of their sons, but then and then the real education. I interviewed someone once, and they said, well, we need to have this rite of passage for boys. So we have all the uncles get together and we go to a cabin and we sit down and say, now you're old enough and now you're a man. No, that doesn't work. The rite of passage is to go out and do hard things. Dr. Jared, last time that I spoke with you, the time went by too fast, and it did again today, but we got to go. How can people find you?
My website is buildingcatholicculture.com. You can also follow my work at exodus90.com, and my books are on Amazon.
How many books have you written?
About 6.
About 6. Which one you're working on right now? Then we got to go.
I am working on a book about clothing.
Really?
So it's kind of like the beer option. Yeah. How can our clothing honor God and prepare us for heaven?
Well, I'm sorry, dude. We live in Hawaii. That's not even. It's so funny when people come here and they're trying to bring their culture of clothing to Hawaii, and they're trying to look goth or overly dressed women trying to look too primpy and stuff. And it's funny because you'll see the goth people show up and they're all black and then dark hair, and then they paddle out and they don't know what to do because they got all this black clothing on, and then they're getting overheated. And we don't really have clothes here. We have surf trunks and a t-shirt, I've
lived in South Florida, so I have a glimpse of that.
You got to put that in your book. Dr. Jared Stout, thank you for joining us. Until next time, may the breath of the Holy Spirit aloha you. Aloha.
Thanks for listening to the Bear Woznick Adventure. Find more manly conversation at the Bear Woznick Deep Adventure YouTube channel. Subscribe and ring the bell.